Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Vinitaly International Academy, announcing the 24th of our Italian Wine Ambassador courses to be held in London, Austria, and Hong Kong from the 27th to the 29th of July. Are you up for the challenge of this demanding course? Do you want to be the next Italian Wine Ambassador? Learn more and apply now at vinitalyinternational.com.
Hello, everybody. My name is Polly Hammond, and you are listening to Uncorked, the Italian wine podcast series about all things marketing and communication. Join me each week for candid conversations with experts from within and beyond the wine world as we explore what it takes to build a profitable business in today's constantly shifting environment. This week, we welcome Christian Holthausen, an absolute rock star of public and press relations in wine. We'll talk relationship building, budgets, influencers, and how good old-fashioned bar stories can help us be better communicators. Let's get into it. Good morning, Christian Holthausen. How are you?
Good morning, Polly. I'm great. Thank you.
You're in Paris today, is that right?
I'm in Paris every day, which is quite cool.
Well, you're sort of in Paris every day, but you've got clients all over Europe and the UK. So, you bebop around.
Yeah, I do bebop around, but my home is Paris. I'm very lucky to be French and American, and I spent most of my childhood in New York, and I've spent most of my adult life in Paris, and I feel very lucky to be able to do so.
So God forbid you ever end up in Cincinnati.
Cincinnati's a cool city. It's a really cool city.
All right. I'll let that one go. So I've asked you to join us today because I have done in the past interviews with publicists and public relations execs, and this is your bailiwick. I mean, everyone that you talk to knows, in wine, knows you. You've got a great reputation as a talented communicator. And I'm really curious to talk with you about some of the differences we see between, sort of old world and new world communication, some of the trends that you're seeing, but also just some of the misconceptions around what PR is and what you can and can't make happen. So maybe let's start with that. PR today, what does your job include anymore in an era of digital and social media and, podcast and YouTube and everything else? What do you spend your day doing?
I mean, I think that one of the things that's really interesting about being the age that I am, which is 48 years old, is we're young enough to adapt, but also old enough to know how things were. And I think it's really interesting because when I first started my career in 1998, we literally had a Rolodex. We literally had personal phone numbers. We didn't even have mobile phones. We had personal phone numbers. And basically your card was basically who you knew. Whereas today you can get in contact with anyone on LinkedIn or on Instagram. If I want to find out who X writer is for, X magazine, you can find that very easily. And if the story is compelling enough, you can completely get in contact with them. So that's definitely been a change for sure. But
Can I jump in on that though? So I remember the days of being hired for your Rolodex. I mean, I was in Los Angeles, I worked in politics, and very much it was who you had access to was, set your pay scale and decided whether or not you were going to get that job. Do you feel like that the loss of the personal connection that is implied by having someone in your Rolodex? I mean, that was an assumption that we knew somebody and we had a direct dial line. Do you think that the loss of that personal connection is outweighed by the access to basically everyone in the world? You might be cold calling or cold messaging someone nowadays. So even though we can get to them, we don't necessarily know them.
I think that I agree with you 100%. I think that the thing that I'm really proud of is that I do have very, very close personal relationships with a lot of the people that I'm reaching out to. They could be, sommeliers, they could be journalists, they could be whoever. And I think that keeping that direct communication, and also I'm not just contacting these people when I'm pitching them something, I'm contacting them just to check in, because a lot of these people become real friends, and you actually get to know them and know what they need and know what they don't need. And you also know what they might be interested in communicating about or not. There's a whole list of people that you're like, okay, they will like this. And then there's a whole list of people that are like, they will not like this. So I think that having that personal relationship is cool. I see that the cold contacting stuff, which now everyone does, I don't really like, because for me, I always like to be introduced to someone by someone. Like if you said, hey, Christian, you need to meet this person, I'd be like, okay, well, we have Polly like in common. So therefore, if I respect her and trust her, then clearly I will probably respect and trust the person she's introducing me to. So I still think that's really important. You see the way that people contact the rest of the world now, and it's so cold. It's very cold and impersonal. And the thing that I hate more than anything is, when you get these emails from people that say, hey, Polly, hope you're well. And you're like, we've never even met before. You don't hope I'm anything.
And what I love about those are the unsubscribe button in that
Totally.
email as well, where I'm like, oh, thank you. I don't know you. You scraped my data. You added my name to a list. And guess what? I don't care what you're pitching. You're out the door. Because
Totally.
that's not how I do business. I think that one of the things that I'm kind of remarking upon as you're talking is this notion of empathetic, communication and sitting in that middle space between the clients and what I'm going to describe as the broadcasters, the publishers, the people who are actually going to get that word out. I always tell the story about George Clooney. The brief version is George Clooney's career changed when he realized that he was the solution to casting directors' problems. It wasn't his problem, it was theirs, which is a very empathetic approach to what kind of problem am I trying to solve? This is the thing, is that you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, what's the problem that I'm trying to solve on both sides here? And how do I actually make my work of value to both of them? And the reason that I'm kind of harping on this is I think a lot of what I see in PR, and we have the opportunity with Five Forests to read a lot of people's, PR pitches. They're so, I'm just going to tell you everything that I want you to know about me, and I don't give a rat's ass how this matters to you in your life, and I'm not going to structure this to apply to you at all. And now go forward and, be my voice. Like it's just so abrasive and poorly written, actually, but we can talk about that separately. So in that context, like, let's just say if I'm out there and I'm looking for someone to do the job that you do, what should I be looking for? Should I be looking at tenure? Should I be looking at breadth of relationships? Should I be looking at sweetness and personality? Like, how do I find the right person for that job?
It's a tough one. I mean, I like your focus on the word empathy, because I think empathy is very important. I think that being a high level empath means that you actually know what people need. You actually know what people don't need. That's an easy skill to assess for someone who's also a high level empath like you. But on paper, I think tenure for me is not necessarily as important, because I've met loads of people who are 25 who are brilliant. I've met loads of people who are 60 who are brilliant, and I've met many of both that are not brilliant at all. So I don't necessarily think that tenure is a thing. I don't know. I always really insist on meeting people personally, in a real personal space, and actually having a very honest exchange about values and convictions and what is important to you and what is important to your client. I think that stuff is really, really important. It's not just sending a pitch. It's not just sending a PowerPoint presentation. It's actually getting to know each other and being okay, on paper, this could work, but could it really, really work? And I think that kind of gets, kind of masked today because today people just like reach out to everyone. Like, I mean, the number of pitches that someone like you gets a day, I mean, come on, like it's crazy. And it's like, did you even like do a little bit of research on 5-4 is? Did you even do a little bit of like understanding of like what I'm doing? Or did you just blindly send me this crap?
No, it's mostly just blind sending. And it's just, I think the thing is that what I find interesting about that, and then we can kind of get back to some of the questions, is it puts me off not just that publicist, but whom they're representing. And that is, that's so unfortunate for the client. And the clients don't even necessarily know. I mean, I like seeing on the back end, there are lots of ways that you can present information. The example being, we sent something out to 4,500 people or whatever it is. Okay, great. How many people actually were interested? Where did those people come from? Where'd you get your list? How did that work? And that's an interesting sort of tie-in to what I always talk about, which is realistic expectations. Is this something that you deal with all the time where you've got a client come to you and they're like, Christian, we want you to make it go viral. Can you get us in the Financial Times, or can you get us in the Wall Street Journal? And just like, great, I've hired a publicist. And so now you're going to go make me famous tomorrow.
Well, I mean, I think that we have to start at the beginning with what is the pitch? What is the story? I mean, a lot of times a winery will say, we have a new gift box coming out. Who cares? Or they'll say, our new vintage is coming out. And I'll be like, once again, who cares? Like, so it has to be developing like a good story. And that's where I think that it used to be like, journalists versus bloggers, or like, publicists versus like, content creators. Whereas now I think everything is very, very like fluid. And now it's about finding the best content. I mean, the way that a lot of freelance journalists are paid today, which is absolutely nothing, they literally will do a copy and paste of your press release because that's all the time they have for. So for me, having the story, knowing what the key messaging is, and then writing a very good press release, 90% of the time, if it's good, it's good. Afterwards, it's about, tapping into the people that you know. But if the story is actually compelling enough, it will go viral like on its own. When people approach me and say, hey, we saw that you did this in X, Y, or Z, could you do the same for me? I'll be like, it's not really an interesting story. It's not really compelling. I don't know how I could do that or how anyone can do it. And I think that it's important to be very honest. But the writing of the materials is more important than ever. You have so many people now that work as publicists and content creators and work for, retail spaces all at the same time. And that's quite cool. I mean, I remember, and I'm sure you do as well, like when blogging first became like a big thing, when the internet developed, you'd always have like, could you invite some bloggers? Well, today, all the good journalists are also bloggers, and all of the good bloggers are also journalists. So I think that the world has kind of become very, very close. And so it's important to make sure that there's always a good story that's interesting to everyone. And then after that, it's just a question of like press and go.
So where does that place you in the process? So we're going to, make up a little scenario. I want something that's going to go viral. I dream of going viral. It doesn't seem like it's useful for me to do things and then come to you after the fact and be like, okay, here's the package. Here's what I've done. Now, can you just go off on your own and make it work? It would seem like the way that I would approach it is I would come to you and be like, okay, Christian, need to build a brand profile. We're going to talk about Cincinnati. And we really need to build a brand profile in Ohio. Can you help me take the action, formulate the next steps, that then we have a compelling message that's going to go viral in Ohio? Like, is there a space where you're coming in and you're giving the advice before the action is taken?
Big time. And I think that I write a lot. I'm a journalist, maybe 5% of my life, which is what I really like to do.
I know you used to have a Guardian series. Isn't that right?
I did. I had a 6-month column in the Guardian once a week, but I also have had the pleasure of writing for Meinigers and for Jancis and for a number of people. And I like to write only if I like what I'm communicating about. But I think that having worked as a journalist, where it helps me is that if you pitch me about your Cincinnati idea, what I first do as a publicist is I come in and I interview you and I say, okay, what do you think? What do you think? Why? And based on that, I'm able to come back to you with an actual communication platform and say, this is where I think you need to emphasize. This is where I think you need to maybe tone down, And, but I think it's really important because a lot of times brands will say, hey, I have this really great idea. And I'll be like, why? And then you get them to actually rip apart exactly what they're doing and you see what's important. I also think it's important to talk to different, stakeholders. Like if it's a winery, like you need to talk to the CEO and the marketing person, but I also want to talk to the winemaker. I also want to talk to the vineyard manager. I want to know, okay, is this in line? Because those kinds of stories are actually kind of overlooked because unfortunately you might have a really well-intentioned marketing person that's kind of missing some key parts of the story. And if I can speak to other people in the company, then it helps me to sort of do like an audit and say, listen, this is what I think you should be talking about. Because a lot of times people say, oh, we're going to change X. And I'm like, okay, but why is that important? Why is that important? Why is that important? And they've done focus groups and they've done, their own studies. And I'm like, okay, but no one's going to think that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we have the exact same thing on the marketing side. And my best clients are the ones where, we serve the marketing side, we serve the digital marketing side, but they have amazing external PR teams that they work with. I do think what I find very interesting about it. So, wine marketers are vilified. It's just like, for whatever reason, we're the scum of the earth. And I think it's because we want to adapt stories to make them work, right? We're like, okay, well, why does this matter to the people in Cincinnati? You need to tell me, yes, why you've done it, but I need to be able to tell them how it's going to change their life, why that's important. Is PR vilified in that same way? Or is it embraced and loved?
I think PR is vilified in the same way that marketing is vilified.
Really?
Like you'll meet people at a cocktail party and they'll say like, so what do you do? And it's sort of like, oh, I work in PR and marketing. And it's kind of like, oh, so you just like blow smoke. And I'm like, oh, hi, nice to meet you too. Whereas like my husband is, a real estate, agent, or like when you have a partner who's like a doctor or a lawyer, that's like what clear sort of like what they do. But I think when you do anything that involves marketing or public relations, people just think, oh, you're just selling me this thing. What I find funny about the word PR is that PR is basically, you've got public relations, but you've also got press relations. You've also got reputational. You've got like a whole bunch of things that are into that. And I think that a lot of gay men like myself and women get thrown into this like, oh, you're just like the PR person. And it's not really given the same amount of validation. Whereas if you're the sales director, if you're the CFO, if you're the head of marketing, it sort of like goes. But a lot of people think like, oh, so you're just like kind of cute and like, tell people what they need to know. And I'm like, that's not exactly like what we do. But I think people don't really know what PR means.
So what does PR include? So if someone comes to you and they're like, Christian, we want to be on TikTok, or can you help us with our social media? Like you look at them and you're like, yeah, nah.
For me, I always start at the beginning. I always say, what is your story? Who are you? What exactly composes you? What are your values? What are your convictions? I think this is so funny. It's so like old school, but like I think doing a SWOT analysis every time is so important. It's like, what are you good at? What are you not good at? What are the opportunities? What are the threats? Let's start with that. But a lot of people go immediately to the I want to be on TikTok without actually figuring
every
out
time.
that.
Oh my God, every time. And so I make my clients do SWOT analyses. I make them do macro environmental analyses. I'll just kind of diverge the macro environmental analysis, which is like external factors that affect your business. And then the micro environmental analysis, which is SWOT analyses. This is the boringest shit I ever asked my client to do. And I'm like, yes, but I know it's not shiny. I know it's not fun. But if you can do this, then the other things make more sense and they're better investments. And we can actually collectively understand why we're making, it comes back to why are we doing this? So high five on the SWOT analysis. I think any good business builder listening is going to be like, yeah, we do that. Okay, something that we deal with all the time, kind of two things that are related, has to do with the short-termism that's happened as a result of digital communications. Is this something that you find carries over into client expectations and how you have to manage that?
Well, I think the thing with client expectations is that they'll see what you've done for one client and they'll expect the exact same thing for them. And I'll be like, different brand, different story, different positioning,
different
budget. So it's really hard for that. Client expectations I find is really hard, but everyone always wants this immediate thing. Like if you're doing the announcement of an acquisition, if you're doing the announcement of a new winemaker, for me, like the obvious players in the media world, they always want to have like the exclusive. But you know what? That's actually done in 2 seconds. And you know what? What you and I both looked at this morning on our social feeds, we've already forgotten 99% of it. So for me, it's about the really compelling stories that are there afterwards. Like, okay, the announcement is, immediate. Everyone was talking about it. But it's like, what about like having a 4-page article in the World of Fine Wine 2 months later that actually addresses specific values, specific ideas? What about having like, a 2-page article in the FT a month later that actually says, okay, this is why Polly decided to position her company like this? Like, because the announcement is just the announcement, but I think it's about the really important stories take longer to read. It's not just like X. Like you flip through it so quickly and it becomes completely obsolete like so quickly. So I think that you can say, okay, these are the people that I'm going to target for today, but these are the people I'm going to target in July, in August, in September. A lot of it also has like a calendar. Like, people have a lot of time in July. They have a lot of time. You know when people don't have a lot of time? September. Because school's starting and they've got kids and they've got all this stuff going on. So it also depends on when you're pitching it. When is the best time to pitch something? Things like that people don't really recognize.
What about demonstrable returns? Is this something that you ever get asked about from clients in the same way that marketing teams say, okay, well, you're going to do it, but what's it going to get for me? How much money am I going to make off that?
Yeah. It's hard.
Or is that not a part of PR?
No, it is for sure. I mean, we used to have, the equivalent, was you always had like the Nielsen's. That was always like a big thing, was you need to have like, this. But the thing that's funny is that today, so much stuff goes untracked. So I made an announcement last week about a French luxury group that was acquiring a winery in Italy. And of course, you have all of the actual press that's generated from that. But also there's this whole like social component, which is a little bit more difficult like to track, where people are saying, I think this, I love this, I believe in this, I believe in this. And people can track it, but you can't necessarily say, okay, this is going to be quantified as you're going to get this return on investment. Because again, a lot of this is really, really long term. The clients that I always turn down are the ones that say, hey, I have an idea. Can I work with you for a month? And I'm like, no. No, because the thing is that bring me on board and I will work with you 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. Like that's specifically what's good, because a lot of it is very long-term stuff. And sometimes you don't say that in English. The grains that you plant now you might not actually see a harvest for 5 or 6 years, but at least you're planting the grains now, the seeds. You're planting them now.
Does that mean that the kind of PR that you do is really just restricted to big, well-moneyed brands? Can
No.
small brands, can they leverage that skill set? Because like when I hear that, I mean, so much of wine that we don't talk about comes back down to money and budget, right?
Mm.
And I hear something like, oh, this might take us a year. This might take 5 years. This might take 6 years. And I can just see my clients, if I were to say that to them, look at it and be like, well, I don't know that I can afford this for 5 years without, how do you not necessarily counter? Because I don't want it to be like it's a counter argument, but how do we help brands in an era where everything is super fast and it's always about, are we making the money that we need this year in this set of returns? How can we help them understand the importance of long-term growth, reputation, community building?
Well, first, I think that it's important that the way that I look at things is that I'm very efficient. It's just me. I don't have an agency. I don't have a team. Like Westbrook Marketing Partners is literally just Christian Holthausen. So I think that I'm able to work with on a very efficient model. In every single case, I work directly with the CEO of the company. So I'm working with someone. So it's very, very efficient. Someone that doesn't necessarily have a lot of time, so it has to be very efficient. That's also very, very results oriented. And I think it's important because the journalists that I speak to and the influencers that I speak to, they appreciate the fact that I have this direct contact, that I actually have visited the property, do know the people involved. My strength and weakness, I think, is the fact that I'm extremely transparent. I mean, I could never take on a client that I don't believe in because people would be like, Christian, you are bullshitting me. I've known you for 20 years. There's no way that you would actually believe what you're just saying to me. So I think that my model is not necessarily one that involves a lot of cash upfront because, again, since I'm very long-term oriented, I have some clients where they'll ask me to work on one project for a 6-month period, and then it goes well, and then they'll bring me on for another project, and you can do it project by project. I mean, I have 7 different clients at the moment, and each one of them has a different scale. Some of them are very, very, very big and have a lot of resources, and others are much smaller and cool and unique and niche. And I think it's important to have a portfolio that represents both of those extremes.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have to be interested in it, right? We
totally
can't all. So you're Franco-American. You mostly work with UK and European brands. Is that correct? Or do you work with American brands?
Mike, so I have a group of brands right now. I've been working with the EPI group for quite a while. They own Piper Heidsieck and Charles Heidsieck in Champagne Rare in Champagne. They also have Biondi Santi and Isole Elena in Tuscany. So they're definitely a very important client. My oldest client, my very first client, was Jane Anson in Bordeaux.
Oh, the lovely Jane. Yeah.
She's so cool. And Jane is doing so much amazing work in Bordeaux and trying to really put a focus on diversity and tokenism. I mean, she's just absolutely brilliant what she's doing.
I'll tell you the reason I asked the question about sort of your geographic distribution of clients. Do you find that there are stark patterns defined by where we are? So the US is different from, the new world is different from the old world. The way that you would work for a California client is very different to how you would work from a Champagne-based client, or even in terms of age brackets, because that's one of the things that I find really interesting is how we access and communicate with the sub-Gen Xers. I was determined to get Gen X into this somehow, with those of us who are, Gen X and beyond. So what do you notice? Where do you have to adapt?
Well, I mean, one of my favorite clients is International Wineries for Climate Action, which was started 3 years ago, originally by the Jackson family in California and the Torres family in Catalonia. And it's really funny because there's now 34 different members from all over the world, so everywhere from Portugal to New Zealand. And we always have this conversation within the team because, the communication in Auckland is very, very different than the communication in Barcelona. It's very different from the communication in Napa. And it's really interesting how you have to kind of adapt. And I think that being Franco-American helps me because maybe I'm a little bit more adaptable than a lot of people. I mean, living in Spain, like I know living in France, a lot of people that if they grew up in one place and their friends are all married to people they went to high school with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that kind of limits a lot of their adaptability. And I think that, one of the things that I think you will agree with me 100% on being American as well is it always makes me laugh when Europeans talk about the American market. They always go, well, Americans like this. And I'm like, if you're talking Boston versus Dallas versus Orange County, you're literally talking about 3 different countries. And people always say, like, can you help us on the American market? And I'm like, what exactly are you doing? Like, where do you target? The thing that's also funny about the United States for Europeans is that, especially European wineries, they think New York, Chicago, Miami, LA, San Francisco. And I'm like, you know what? There are so many markets in the US that you're not even looking at, where actually the same 50 winemakers roll into New York every year. Why not go to Richmond? Why not go to Minneapolis? Why not go to Cincinnati? Why not go
That's
someplace?
why I pick on Cincinnati, because Ohio is turning into this great market, actually.
Totally.
Go to DC, go to Austin. How much? So when we're doing that, we rely pretty heavily on consumer behavior data or first party data, where we know exactly where their audiences are. Do you have to use that kind of quantitative data in strategy or in communication design?
We do in the sense that I think that people that do what I do, you need to definitely have a foothold on the market to understand where people are going. I mean, the US I'm obviously quite strong in, the UK as well, and kind of knowing what the demographics are. And then if you need to have additional information, then you need to do the research and you need to figure out. A lot of what I do is usually I lean on, contacts I have. I lean on friends that I have, and I say, listen, I'm thinking about opening up this for this client in South Africa. What do you think? Where do you think I should go? How do you think I should go about this? And I think that you can't be afraid to keep asking questions, because the thing is that you don't know everything in the world, and you can ask questions about markets that maybe you might not be as familiar with. And I think that that's okay. And I think qualitative, quantitative data, both of them are super important. And I think that the US, the same thing in the UK, everyone wants to be in London, and it's go 10 minutes outside London and you'll find people that are so happy to talk about a young New Zealand winemaker or a young Catalonian winemaker.
So just jumping back to the American versus the rest of the world thing for a minute. One of the things that we notice, and it's so stark, especially going between New Zealand and Americans. My American clients are completely down with saying, we are the most badass. We are the best at. We rock at this. Now, we've got the personality choice, we've got the vibe, but we also have the confidence building. So how do you have to adapt the communications or the information that you send out to reflect the differences in those, personality types? Do you?
I mean, the American thing that I really find hard is all of the self-promotion. I'm personally very, very good at promoting a brand. So if you said, hey, Christian, you're going to promote Polly. I'd be like, I'm on it. I can do it. I always use the example of the birthday party at the bar. For example, if I walk into a bar, I don't know anyone there, and I say, hey, everyone, it's my birthday. People are going to be like, who gives a fuck about this guy? But if I walk into the bar and I've got you and I say, hey, this is my friend Polly. Today is her birthday. All of a sudden people are like, hey, Polly, shots. What do you want? So it's all about having like sort of like a wingman, which is how I always kind of approach, public relations, like in general. Like, I hate the self-promotion. I don't have business cards. I don't have a website. I don't walk into a cocktail party in New York and go, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm always a bit more like on the reserved side personally. Like, I don't like promoting brand Christian. I like promoting brand whoever I'm working with at the time. But Americans are really, really, really pushy on that. And I think having lived abroad for as long as both you and I have, like we see that. And, there's that great Proustian line where he says, it's not about seeing new landscapes. It's about seeing old landscapes with new eyes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when I go back to New York where I grew up, I'm like, oh my God, stop promoting yourself. What is wrong with you? Just sit down and maybe do more listening than speaking.
Well, so this is an interesting thing. I'm going to go off piece for a minute. I have two daughters, 19 and 20, and they've grown up in this era of personal branding, which you and I didn't. Like that, no. I often say that in our lifetime, we had no logos, right? Was the big discussion, the big book that came out in the 90s that was around the issues of taking that corporate brand, like the personal branding, just branding as a whole. And what I notice with this next generation coming up is they have a very keen understanding of public personal branding versus private life in a way that, I think a lot of people who are older than them who are trying to mesh or adapt to the two, they don't really understand that we've got the off the record. We've got the private conversations. These are generations that are doing so much more with direct messaging, ephemeral, like literally sending voice messages that disappear the minute they've been heard. And I find that fascinating for how we have to learn to change our own communication. Well, another thing though, just kind of returning to the idea of what we all do for a living. I said this. So I interviewed Lindsay Dyke, who is a young publicist in Oregon. I mean, young in the sense she's younger than me. And we were talking about the fact how the public voices are so often crafted by very quiet people. You know what? I give my clients my voice. I don't give a rat's ass about social media because I spend all week long helping my clients actually have better, stronger voices. And I think that is a really unique challenge compared to, say, like influencers, because influencers, they're in your face, getting that work and showing, look, if my voice is this big and I've got 100,000 followers, I can do this for you. And I actually find that to be a real, not challenge, but just like point of curiosity that so many of us who are professional communicators in some sense or another really just, and I don't have business cards either.
I think the personal branding thing is really funny because my sister is a child psychologist, and she talks about this all the time, that the sort of 14 to 18-year-old set today, the personal brand is so important, and that represents a huge generational shift. I mean, we always talk about, a generational shift, and a lot of the things that, our parents said about us are the same things that their parents said about them. But I think with the development of all of these new technologies, now you actually see something that is it's kind of like the invention of television. I mean, it's such a huge like generational shift. And you see these 14, 15-year-old kids that they're developing their personal brand. And the personal brand is like so important. But she also says, my sister Gretchen, she's my best friend in the world, she says all the time, like, a lot of these kids, like, they don't realize that what they're posting is going to stay with them like forever. So, women, that are 14 years old sending, racy photos to a guy that they just met, like the night before. I mean, I think people from our generation, like, that's just hilarious. It's like, why would you actually do something? Because the thing is that now we're in an environment where everything is there forever. So you can't necessarily eliminate it. I mean, how many people of our age are so happy that when we were at university, we didn't have cell phones? I mean, there's a number of things that
we were the last of the anonymous generation. I mean, I think that thank God for that, right? Thank God for that.
So much.
I'm right there with you.
And in terms of the next point, in terms of how do we adapt, I sort of feel like we need to encourage people to know what is real and what isn't. I have a friend who is a director of a very, very, very famous hotel here in Paris, and I'm not going to mention it. And they basically have a budget for influencers where basically hot, young, 22, 23-year-old guys and girls come in and basically get topless and roll around like on the sheets of a hotel where the basic room starts at like 600 euros a night. And I was like, is that really like efficient? Like who's actually looking at that? And my friend told me, she was like, you have no idea. She's like, there are so many people that actually look to book hotels based on Instagram. For me, I'm kind of like, okay, I guess our generation ago, you would have like a guidebook. I will ask for recommendations. If I was coming to look for a hotel in Barcelona, I'd be like, hey, Polly, what do you know? What do you recommend? Da, da, da. I guess you can go on Booking and TripAdvisor as well. But I personally, at 48 years old, wouldn't necessarily go on Instagram and be like, wow, Raphael is rolling around in that bed and says that it has a very high thread count. I'm going to book that hotel. But apparently I'm missing something, because my friend told me that for her hotel in Paris, that actually goes a really long way. And she said that the media budget that they used to spend 10 years ago on traditional luxury publications has been scaled down. And now they spend so much money on giving one free night in a room to these people. I look at that and I'm like, okay, but clearly, Raphael or Joanna, whatever their names are, they're clearly being paid to do this. And my friend's comment was like, yeah, but do you really think that X, Y, or Z model really believes in Lancome or really believes in Hermes, or are they just being paid for it? So I think that the model has changed in some ways, but maybe not entirely.
So there is an interesting article this week on the CNN International website that's talking about how travel and hospitality is reopening, and so are the influencers. I'd recommend reading it because it talks about exactly this. So, on the one hand, you've got the hotels and the establishments who are using influencers to great success and how much of a budget there is. You got the ones who are like, we're sick of getting pitches from Instagrammers or influencers who never do their research. There's this one great quote where a woman's like, look, I don't want some 22-year-old rolling naked on the sheets. But if I had a 45-year-old woman who's like, you know what, I'm tired, I'm chubby, I wear mostly black, but you know what,
Totally.
I have a great sense of humor and I like the quirkiness. She's like, that's the person who I'd give the room to because that's
Totally.
the personality of my brand. But then it does have the feedback from the influencers and like the professional influencers, the people who've been doing it going on 10 years, who are like, you know what? In 3 days, I am there to work. I meet the staff, I meet the people, I take thousands of photos. I craft a whole story that instead of one $50,000 ad that rolls out in a magazine, they are going to literally have a campaign that will live on from the minute I walk out the door.
Yeah.
And I was, I think that again, it's easy to get, especially for someone like me, I can be a little derisive on influencers because it's easy to mentally place myself 5 or 6 years ago when there were not professionals who did a good job. But now we do actually have people that I could look at and say, okay, I could get behind having this particular person working for one of my clients because we have a legacy of good work, So, anyway, so I find that I find the Instagrammer thing and the influencer thing so interesting. You and I are never going to be Soho housers. That's it. But there is a large contingent who will. And it actually, so one of the questions I have, you work with a lot of luxury brands, and before you were Westbrook and went out on your own, you've worked for a lot of champagne brands. I feel like things that sparkle and effervesce, we can sell the pants off of. Do you find a difference between working for the brands? So take any champagne brand. We don't have to pick ones that you've worked with, that they have. They're more dynamic. They're literally more bubbly. They're more full of life. They've got a more fun audience. Do you find a difference in how you work with, a champagne brand that's sold all around the world for special occasions and celebrations, and how you message a more traditional staid wine brand?
Well, I think champagne is a lot going for it. I mean, because Clovis, the very first king of France, converted to Christianity in the 5th century, champagne became...
Wait, are we having our History Channel moment?
We are indeed.
Okay.
It had it was always the king of wines and the wine of kings, going all the way back to the 5th century. So champagne has always had a lot, going for it. And I think that this idea of celebration has always been the biggest strength and the biggest weakness of champagne, because, champagne is always, for celebrations. I think a number of houses in Champagne, and a lot of the champagne houses were started in the 18th century, the 19th century. They actually have been around for a while. And certainly 10, 15 years ago, when you went to visit a house in Champagne, the story was always, let's talk about Marie Antoinette, let's talk about caviar, let's talk about Russia in the 18th century. Like, it was always really background. You always sat in a very fancy room in Reims or in Epernay. You were always received by a very handsome, brand ambassador who was 25 years old, boy or girl, very beautiful.
Influencer.
Exactly, a primary influencer. And they would tell you these stories. Whereas today, people that come to Champagne want to go to the vineyard. They want to go, hey, are you using herbicides? Are you using pesticides? How are you doing this? How are you doing that? How many men versus women do you have on the board? What is your approach like on diversity? And the smartest champagne houses are the ones that are actually embracing that. Champagne to me is in many ways like Bordeaux, in the sense that it's kind of we've been the best in the world for 2 centuries, so why question ourselves? The smart producers are actually doing that and actually asking questions and saying, how can we talk about what's more important? The false dichotomy that I hate more than anything is, champagne versus Prosecco, champagne versus Cava, champagne versus English sparkling wine. There are great producers and crap producers and okay producers and mediocre producers, all over the world. So for me, it's about knowing the best producers. I mean, I will drink Charles Heidsieck tonight, and I will drink Raventos tomorrow. And I'm not necessarily saying that I have a preference versus wines made in France versus wines made in Spain. I just love both of those producers. And so I think that today it's less about the appellation, because I think you agree with me. It used to be for a long time, as long as it said champagne on the label, that's all people needed. Whereas now people want much more. And I think that the direct to consumer business model, which a lot of producers have been embracing, as they should, is going even further, because I have clients where a consumer will come from the United States and actually buy 16 bottles at the Domaine, that they could find the exact same bottles at their local wine shop in Seattle, but they want to feel like they've bought it from the Domaine, that the winemaker signed the bottles, that they know the winemaker, that they have a selfie with the winemaker.
This is like you go to Paris and you buy an LV bag. Totally. It's the exact same thing, because I bought it in Paris. Yes, I could absolutely get it at South Coast up the street, but I'm going to buy it here because it's the experience. I'm going to tell the story every time I open that bottle, every time I use that bag, every time I wear those shoes, whatever it is. Oh, that's right, I did this there, and I'm reminded of how awesome that moment was. So last question. Luxury versus non-luxury. Luxury is a word that I notice, luxury is a word that I say is an internal word. We don't ever go out and say we're a luxury brand. That's naff. Are there lessons from your experience working with luxury brands and how luxury brands plan their communication and then implement their communication that non-luxury, super premium, iconic brands can learn from?
I mean, I think that the thing that luxury brands, like genuine luxury brands, have in common is this kind of like internal belief that they actually are amazing, but it's that kind of quiet Protestant self-confidence that they don't need to be like flashy and like in your face. I think that anything that is flashy and in your face is really seem to be as new money, and people don't want it. A lot of luxury brands, I mean, if you look at brands, like look at Hermes, like look at Dior, look at brands that they know they're cool. They don't necessarily have to be throwing it like in your face. Like they're just kind of quietly confident. And I think this quiet confidence is something that, luxury brands have. Like they know what they're doing is amazing. They don't need to brag about it. They promote it, but in a very cool kind of almost effortless way. Even if it's not completely effortless, the impression that they give is that it is very effortless. In terms of cues for luxury, what's really funny is that talking about, Marie Antoinette and caviar today has completely been replaced with different things. Like what's a luxury value today? Time, health, the future, the environment. I mean, it's amazing how many luxury brands are spending
generosity,
so much
collaboration. Like
totally.
There's
They're
so
spending
much.
so much space in the environmental sphere, and they're spending so much time talking about, how they farm and how they work and how people are treated. And I think that's really positive. Where I think there's a real opportunity for a lot of brands is to actually be like, what is real? Because the greenwashing thing is real. Putting up pictures of diverse people on an ad campaign in Times Square or on the Place des Vosges is fine. But I want to know how many of those people are actually on your board of directors. How many of those people are actually being paid properly what they're worth. So I think that we're all luxury is all communicating now around all of this stuff. But I think the opportunity for a lot of brands is to say, no, we're actually doing it. Like we're actually doing it, and legitimately, this is concretely, quantitatively what we are doing. And I think that's going to be an interesting space to see explored, because I think consumers are getting really used to greenwashing, and they're getting really used to, diversity campaigns, and a lot of it kind of reeks of tokenism.
Do we have another hour? Wow. Like where do we start on that one? That's a whole different podcast. So what exciting news do you have coming up? Do you have anything like juicy that we need to be paying attention to?
I wish I did. I was just having such a nice conversation. I felt like we should be sitting together and like having a glass of wine. I don't. The one thing that I always try to promote as much as possible is International Wineries for Climate Action. We're doing such amazing work at the moment, and we're looking for many, many more people to come on board. So if we can spread the word about that, that would be really, really cool.
So IWCA.
So
regenerative agriculture.
Yes, and we're focusing on reducing one's carbon footprint. So there's a lot of wineries now in Spain, in Portugal, in Australia, in New Zealand. We're looking to find a few more producers specifically in Italy and Germany, because I think a lot of the regenerative stuff has been talked about a lot more in the new world. And lots of people in the old world are doing it, but they just need to basically come on board a bit. So it's not a scoop, but it's definitely something that I think is most important. What I like about the IWCA is that it's about forming a global coalition. I really hate this X versus Y stuff. We're all in this together. Climate change is affecting all of us. So we have to work together. Whether you're in the Barossa Valley or in Sonoma, climate change is real. So we need to all be working together more and more and more. So I would definitely like to get more people into that space for sure.
High five. Thank you so much. You rock. I love getting to talk to you. Sister. And that's a wrap for today. Thank you for listening, and a great big thank you to Christian for joining us. The Italian Wine Podcast is among the leading wine podcasts in the world and the only one with daily episodes. Tune in each day and discover all our different shows. Be sure to join us next Sunday for another look at the world of wine marketing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Italian Wine Podcast, brought to you by Vinitaly Academy, home of the gold standard of Italian wine education. Do you want to be the next ambassador? Apply online at vinitalyinternational.com for courses in London, Austria, and Hong Kong, the 27th to the 29th of July. Remember to subscribe and like Italian Wine Podcast and catch us on SoundCloud, Spotify, and wherever you get your pods. You can also find our entire back catalog of episodes at ItalianWinePodcast.com.
Hi guys, I'm Joy Livingston and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.